Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today we are talking with Mike Meyer. Mike is a contractor for FedEx Ground running out of 8 stations in 3 states. He has seemingly mastered the areas of safety and service, as evidenced by FedEx Ground awarding him 11 new CSAs in calendar year 2022 alone. Now, to put that into context, most contractors don't stand up 11 CSAs for the entirety of their whole career, but Mike and his team pulled it off in 1 calendar year, which is incredible. In this episode, we talk about the importance of identifying what Mike calls a money trap, which is a CSA that doesn't have any chance of actually turning a profit. We talk about his strategy for standing up new CSAs. And finally, we get into the number one thing which has allowed Mike to add to his bottom line this year, the alternative vehicle program. Mike has actually swapped out or replaced more than 40 full-time step vans with vehicles for the AVP program. I'm pleased to give you my conversation with Mike Meyer. This episode is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. AP Equipment Financing can bring you the best deals on step vans, panel vans, cutaways, and more, deliver them straight to your facility, and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description to this episode or visit apfinancing.com. All right, we're here with Michael Meyer. We've got a lot to talk about for sure. Actually, before we had started this, you and I were chatting, and you were talking about how you've been communicating to your team that today's FedEx contracting is a whole new era. And that word era, you've broken down as an acronym, meaning you focus on efficiency. R is relay, running relay stations. We've talked about that a little bit before on this podcast with a couple other guests, but it's still a relatively new concept. I think that you're probably the original guy to try one of those. And then the last one that I definitely want to talk about, the A stands for AVP. And Mike, you were very complimentary. To me, you had mentioned that you've been paying attention to the podcast. You learned a little bit more about the AVP program, and it inspired you to go out and really pursue it. And you added something like 40 AVP vehicles this year. So we're definitely going to talk about that. For those of you watching, listening, we're going to save that to the end. So hang around to the end. We'll talk about Mike's strategy for adding 40 plus AVP vehicles in a single year. Mike, before we get into any of that, I have to ask, do your name, Michael Meyer, do you get compared to the actor or the fictional serial killer, Mike Myers, more often? Which of those jokes do you hear more?
Ryan, all my life, I've heard both. And what I've learned after all my years on planet Earth is just to share with people that I've never killed anybody that was nice to me or made fun of my name. And that usually ends it right there.
Right on. Okay, real quick, let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike, before you had ever even heard of FedEx Ground. What's your background?
That's a good question. I guess I was a misguided youth. I wanted to play football. I went to University of South Carolina for such and realized that was not going to be my calling in life. Everybody was faster, stronger. And I started focus on studying and joined the real world and tried to play ice hockey and ran wires under people's homes and never really knew what I was looking for. And then one day out of the blue, I applied to an ad on monster.com in 2001. And it was for FedEx hiring for an outbound sort manager. And 32 people applied for it. Ryan, I have no idea why they picked me. I've never backed a truck in my life. I knew nothing about the business. And they took a gamble. And I'm thankful to this day that gentleman, Tommy Herndon, took a gamble on me and basically allowed my FedEx career to develop, where it could have been squashed if they had chose one of the other 31 applicants. So I started working for FedEx for 5 years, and every day I saw a parking lot with contractor cars with BMWs and Mercedes, and I was like, man, how do I get one of those cars? And I was a young, impressionable kid, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And my own family, my friends, they told me I was crazy. I had a job. There are so many reasons to stay with what you already had. And I just had that entrepreneurial spirit, and it was not going to be denied no matter what anybody told me. And I sold my car, which had a little bit of equity in it, and I went, Ryan, without a car for my first year as a contractor. I carpooled to work with another contractor, Um, bought him his liquid diet on the way home, and in return, he paid for the gas, and we carpooled to work and forth. And I went the first 4 months without a settlement. The first 4 months, that settlement got handed over to the retiring contractor that I bought the first route from. Um, I remember eating microwave popcorn and Little Caesars hot and ready's for a year. I mean, I sacrificed everything to get into this space, and I feel like I've been married to it now for forever. And at the same time, I'm very thankful for the opportunity that FedEx has given me to allow me to become a contractor. And one route has turned into
How many
80 now. I have about 80 on the road, and I oversee 50 other routes in our wolf pack. So I oversee 130 routes every day in our wolf pack, and I own about 80 of them in 8 stations and 3 states. I'm in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all SEC. Go Gamecocks! And I've started with one and build it up, and now it's at a point where it feels like it's run like a CEO style, like almost absentee owner, Ryan. And I do a lot of Zoom calls. I probably do 10 to 12 Zooms a week to manage it.
Yeah, Mike, there's a few things in talking with you before this that have really stood out to me. And I mean this genuinely, that I talk to a lot of really smart people in this business, but you have seemed to really figure things out in a way that a lot of other contractors haven't. And a few of the things that you've mentioned to me before is that you don't go into the terminal very often at all. You're not in there very often. Another thing that you've mentioned to me is that FedEx really loves working with you because your safety score and your service scores are impeccable. And so you get handed a lot of opportunities to move into new CSAs for free. How many CSAs did you get awarded to you for free last year?
We did 11 launches last year of new areas in those 3 states. Some went to me, some went to the Wolfpack, and 2 other contractors. And but collectively, there was 11 last year, and then this year there was only 1 this year. I basically worked my tail off last year, and this year we needed to fine tune what we had put on the road last year. So this year, 2023, has been a lot of fine tuning. But I will say this: over the course of my career at FedEx, I purchased that first route and sold a car and a contract. And since then, I think maybe I've bought 4 or 5 routes since then. And I think the rest were grown organically through growth, e-commerce, or through opportunities to FedEx.
Now, you've been doing this for a long time, and to have 11, to start up 11 areas in a single year, I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, most people don't do that for their entire career, as a FedEx contractor. But you also sell portions of your business or entire businesses too. And you've described yourself to me, Mike, that, you'll go into an area, it's distressed. You need to stand up that area, get it going, and you'll work there and build it out for maybe a couple years. FedEx likes that stability. But then you'll sell it, right? Tell us a little bit about that strategy.
I think for me, it was never planned. I'm a very artistic, unstructured guy. There was never a plan to say we fell in love with this area or did it with this area. Each route, each CSA is completely different. I will say that it became a little much when we did 3 stand-ups in 1 month last year. The month of July, I was in 3 different CSAs in 1 month starting. The cost is probably $8,000 to $10,000 per route. Last year, we stood up on 74 routes last year and sold probably 30-ish or so. So we like to even it out. We like to sell 1 for every 1 we get. And last year, it happened so fast. There was no time to. I mean, the growth opportunities over the last 3 years have been unprecedented in FedEx times for established contractors. I mean, there's so many opportunities around for many reasons. Some are unfortunate. That I guess we'll speak on later. But the reality is somebody has to deliver the package at the end of the day. And FedEx has made it very clear that they're going to make those decisions based around safety and service scores. And I was trained by FedEx in the terms of safety, and that's carried with me the trainings I got from FedEx in terms of safety and that service culture. And I hopefully have set it through all 300 employees of the Wolfpack, from top to bottom, because without safety, without service, does the rest even matter?
So safety and service. Yeah, and just to highlight again a few of the things, it seems like you're doing really, really well. I mean, first of all, just nailing safety and service, that's really tough. Even if you just have one CSA and you're showing up every day and you're super hands-on, it's tough to knock it out of the park with respect to safety and service. Another thing is, you're going into, you'd mentioned there's some unfortunate reasons why you get some of these opportunities. We try to keep things pretty positive here on the Routing for Success podcast. I think it's perfectly fine to talk about, challenges but how we overcome them. But, the reality, Mike, is I talk to a lot of contractors off the air who are struggling, and they just don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see a way that they are going to be able to make this business work. I would have to assume that at least some of those 11 CSA opportunities that you stood up last year, at least some of them were probably from contractors who were trying to run them and just failed. I don't know how many those were. My question, though, is what allows you, Mike, to go into an area where another contractor couldn't make it work, they couldn't figure it out, and you're able to go in there and make it work?
Great question with a lot of different answers. Each situation is completely different of another. I will say, generally speaking, there are money traps listed on certain sites, and it doesn't matter if I'm the contractor or somebody brand new off the street is the contractor. You may service it, you may have great safety results, but if you have a negative cash flow, why are we doing it? We're not here to subsidize a $90 billion company. We're here to be a for-profit organization. And like I said, there are money traps, as I call them, out there that all contractors, especially a newer contractors, needs to run. Until there's a certain amount of money in a CSA, doesn't matter if you have a 99.9, doesn't matter if you're a tier 5 safety, if you're the one putting money into it, and it doesn't make sense. And until Pittsburgh engineers figure this out, there's going to continue to be money traps in every part of the country. And hopefully people can learn how to assess these traps and avoid them before they step in them. So I would say some of the opportunities we went into have not been profitable. We barely stay afloat in. And over time, we're trying to fix them and get more efficient, as we could talk about later in this call. There are ways to fine tune things, but at some point in time, there's just not enough money in a CSA for a contractor to be interested in it and to put their blood, life, and sweat and equity into that CSA. You need a return. We're business people. And until there's returns on all these CSAs, I'm going to say is be very careful. As far as contractors failing in terms of service and safety, we'll start with safety. It's hard for me to have sympathy or shed a tear for a contractor that's a tier 1 for over 1 year, and their drivers have hit parked cars at red lights at 60 miles per hour and caused people's loss of life. I mean, the nuclear verdicts these days on large trucking companies, including FedEx, are astronomical. And you see that with Schedule L. You see that with insurance deductions. FedEx is trying to help us supplement what they're paying out more money than they've ever paid out. And if a contractor can't figure out safety in a year, I mean, I think a year is enough time for the oddball incidents to come out. That's the reason why some of the opportunities exist at Ryan. So I would say it's sometimes the contractors dealt a bad hand and they could not win in it. And another time, I would say that it was the contractor's inexperience, or perhaps they were too large and they didn't have the support staff and the hierarchy and the safety teams and the type of infrastructure to support that expansion.
Yeah, so talking about why FedEx contractors fail in this business, and this is, overgeneralizing, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this, but you could almost put it in two buckets, right? The contractor fails either because, in the first bucket, FedEx takes the contract away. And that can happen. And the common reasons for that are your safety and service. If you're not making it happen on safety, or if you're having too many accidents, things like that, or if you're just getting too many, DNAs and you're not fulfilling the service, you could lose your contract. That's one way. The other way is you just don't make enough money and you voluntarily leave, or you file bankruptcy, or it's just not cash flowing, so you walk away. Again, very high level. I'm overgeneralizing here. Those are the two different ways that it seems like people fail. They either lose their contract or they just have to walk away because they can't make money. So you're talking about money traps. So how do you identify that? Are you able to spot a money trap before you ever go into a CSA, or do you just have to start to figure out if you're in one?
Ryan, we like to reverse engineer everything. We have algorithms and a corporate staff, and we like to know the answer before FedEx gives it to us. So on those launches, it was 74 routes, I believe, over 11 launches, most of which occurred in a 4-month period, like May through September. Actually stood up too during peak, believe it or not. I would say that we calculated what the revenue per stop should be based on how many trucks we know we needed to run based on service and safety. And FedEx would say, this is what we see. And I would say, well, this is what I see. If you want it fixed, this is what you got to pay. And if you guys aren't willing to pay for this and it's going to be a money trap, I'm not putting my name on the side of my truck in an area where I know I can't win, or my drivers can't win, my managers can't win. My people count on me to put them in a situation where they can win. And if there's a CSA where you're sacrificing safety and service to try to make a buck, I would caution you to run. And by reverse engineering it and saying this is where they need to be, not can we make it work off what they're telling us we need to make it work on. I think that's the key to that piece there.
You mentioned you have algorithms and you have different ways of looking at an opportunity and a CSA opportunity before you ever go in to see if it'll be financially viable. Obviously, really going through that is way beyond the scope of this conversation here in this podcast. Can you give us a couple little things that you do, though, that maybe other contractors could start adding into their process when they're looking at a CSA opportunity?
Sure. And I will say that I also said no to, or the Wolfpack group said no to, I would say at least 5 opportunities last year that we deemed to be money traps or pitfalls. So it's okay to say no. Let's start with that. I know there's a lot of contractors listening in that want to grow their business. They want to grow organically. All I'm going to say is be very careful, tread lightly. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it could end up putting you in a situation away from your family. It could cause stress. Be very careful. Expanding sounds great on paper, and when you get out there, like you're saying, Ryan, you get out there and you're like, oh my, what did I sign my name to for 12 months or whatever? So what are some things that are red flags to us? For one, we had an operation last year, let's just say in the Southeast, and the revenue came in on the PCAT somewhere around $1.2 billion. And that was to run what they believed, and I'm sitting there doing the math, basically how many stem miles, how many total miles is a truck going to run? In this area, it was about 130 miles. So for 130 miles, this is how many stops FedEx expects to see for that amount of mileage. Route Consultant has a great chart on a podcast with how many miles should match each route, and it's pretty similar to mine. So basically, the more miles, the less stops that driver should be able to do, and vice versa. If it's a 60-mile run, FedEx likes to see 160 stops. If it's 200 miles, maybe they only want to see 85. So we kind of look at that first, and we gather how many trucks we need to fit. And then, based on that chart, we then know how much money each distance costs. So that route that is 60 miles with 160 stops, FedEx is looking to pay $110,000 or so for that route. If it's 200 miles to do those 85 stops. They're now looking to compensate us around 135,000 a route, just using ballpark numbers. And the algorithms actually calculate how many routes it really takes to do this. And then, Ryan, I do something that I recommend every contractor listening do this. Before you buy a car, you usually test drive it. Before you buy a house, you walk through it. Before you put your kids at a new school, you probably walk around the school to make sure they're safe. I recommend you do the same thing for your business. There's not a CSA we stood up on that we didn't put our company car, and my wife and I didn't drive through those streets. And we don't go down every street. There's a bad part of most towns I'm not going to be taking my kids trick-or-treating at. But I will say this: if I don't feel comfortable driving through that CSA, knowing I got to run 7 trucks, and my math is saying I need 9 trucks, and I'm driving through the CSA and I see mountains, I see, it could be snow-capped hills. These things take time, long driveways. I'm not sure DRO accounts for those things accurately, or what Pittsburgh is paying us on. Those are things I'm looking for, Ryan, that caused me to say no 5 times last year, and I'll continue to say no. On the other hand, I visited a nice country town I've never heard of in North Carolina, ate Valentine's dinner with my wife at a steakhouse here. We drove around, and we just had really good vibes about it. And when we told our people, look, we ate there, we drove there, we fully endorse this, we know this is a good area, and then we built it from scratch, and 2 years later, it's one of our top producing CSAs. So I think sometimes get out there and treat it like a new car or house before you sign your name on it.
And how do you stand up a new area that's far away from where you live? I mean, do you just have to rent a hotel and do it yourself, or do you have a team that you deploy? What's your method for that?
We have a team. They're called the Black Ops teams. Now they're amazing drivers that live in Tennessee, North Carolina. I mean, they like assignments. So we give them a 2-week assignment. We pay for the hotel and pay them a very high rate per stop. Ryan, for what we look at when we engineer that is we take however much money comes in per delivery, like a stop, a fuel stop, plus a package. We give 100% of that to that team. We're saying, look, we're not going to make any money, especially after tax liability and all. We're not going to make any money, but we're going to get stabilization and we're going to get a proper training. One lesson learned, and once again, I learned a lot of these lessons from doing things the wrong way over the years. If you think you're going to go into a brand new CSA and everybody you hire is going to be awesome and you're not going to hit any mailboxes and do anything, the best way to do that is spend the money up front. I know I'm going to spend $8 to $10 grand per route to get it going because there's no people there. There's no processes here. And I'm going to get out in 30 days. I'm going to have all my Black Ops reassigned in 2 to 4 week period. If you go in there without that labor, that specialized forces, I could easily have men and women from locals that I churn. It may not get fixed for 6-8 months. And now how much did it cost me? The cost of a turnover is about $5,000 in my company. How many people do I have to turn through? And how many extra trucks do I have to run to get the same quality results as my special ops team? So we have a team we use. They're also good during peak because I send them to my area most at risk, where me and my corporate teams deem areas of concern. And then they do expansions during the year. So any large contractor, I think, really, really should consider having a team like that.
Now, Mike, I've spoken with a lot of larger contractors who are pretty static with their entire operation. Maybe they've have 4, 5, 6, 8 CSAs, but they've had those same CSAs for years, and they're not interested in going into new areas, and they're not interested in selling off portions of their business too. Maybe they'll sell the whole thing one day, but they're fine just running their business as is. You actually have a team dedicated to going and standing up new areas. You're standing up new areas all the time. 11 last year, 1 this year. It was a slower year for your Black Ops team. But then for everyone you take on, you also sell another one. So you've got this churn going, not of employees, but of entire CSAs. Why is that the right way for you to run your business instead of, just staying with the CSAs that you have and running those same ones for years to come?
That is a phenomenal question. And I answer this off what's off the top of my head because I've never been asked that before. I think it's fun. I think there's an element of complacency. For me, I'm a very self-confident person that likes to win. And I want to do things that challenge me and my teams to get better and to win in new directions. We cannot stay stagnant. We have my wife is like, "Are we done this year?" I go, "Honey, that is the last one." She knows better, Ryan. She knows that's not going to be the last one. We've had a hard time saying no in the past. If it's the right opportunity and we say no, Ryan, that means employees of mine did not have a chance to get promoted into management. We had 89 promotions from drivers into assistant managers into managers into six-digit site leader positions at our relays. It all started by that same expansion. So anytime an employee of mine says, "Are we really doing this again?" I say, "Well, have you asked yourself why you're here? How you got that position you're in was that our company was not coasting to a red light. Our company is not breaking hard. We want to keep looking through the windshield, and if it's the right opportunity, I feel like I'm mid-aged and that I have a lot of time left to give to this organization and to FedEx. And for us, Ryan, we don't think about it till you ask me that. It's never been a question that's come up. And my wife and I always say we did it for our people, and every expansion is opportunity for our people, one way or the other.
Do you feel like you get a lot of satisfaction contributing to the success of others, to your people?
Yes, I think that's my biggest driver. Ryan, quite honestly, and this is something I wanted to say on this podcast. I was hoping I'd have an opportunity to without forgetting. My entire life, I lived not having money or having money or chasing money or pursuing money. And about 5 years ago, I realized it was completely wrong. 5 years ago, I had, I don't know, 30 routes and worked 5 hours a week. I mean, I was very happy with my life before COVID hit and another expansion hit, a large expansion. We expanded 4 times during COVID, Ryan. I had to let you think about that. Um, and I'm going to say at that point, I realized that if you try to chase a different dream than money, you'll make more money. And that the dream that I learned to chase is to be the best at what I do. I don't compete against other contractors. I compete against what I did yesterday or the year before, the month before. That we're very competitive. We're very hungry as an organization. And that will to win, that will to find success is what propelled us to be where we are now. It was not chasing money on a whiteboard in a boardroom or some theory on paper. That's not what got us here. It was not looking at money, not making decisions on a checkbook, but making decisions on what was best for our people and what just felt right. And by doing so, I feel like the money followed us for making that decision. And I haven't stopped. And one of my regrets in life is I wish I had learned that earlier.
So going back to the strategy of, I mean, basically not flipping, turning around CSAs, right? There's a CSA struggling. You go in there, you fix it up. You put good people in, good processes, you get it going, stay there. I think you had said for maybe 2 years at a time, and then you sell it. Tell us about the sales process. How does that work?
Yeah, good question. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I never planned on selling anything. I think FedEx forced me to sell it. They told me they told me I was, oh, what do you call it? Scale was 20% in a building for a husband and 20% for a wife. So you really could have 40% of a building before COVID. And then they changed the scale to 15%, I think. And I was right at it. And they still gave me a CSA knowing I went over it. They had more leniency. So, Ryan, in 2021, after contractors struggled on COVID, we could predict Christmas. We can't predict a pandemic, right? Contractors are going to struggle. Everybody struggled during COVID trying to find staffing and all. And Ryan, what ended up happening is FedEx reduced the scale 2 weeks after Christmas. I mean, it was like January 6th, and I'm getting a phone call saying I'm over scale. I go, well, that's because you changed the field goal post again. If you keep changing the scale every year, one year I'm going to be compliant, one year I'm not. And I was like, is there anything? They basically forced me to sell the CSAs that were flipped, I guess you could say. But it wasn't by choice. We probably would have kept them. Some of them were tough to part with. You have drivers and managers that have been with you for a long time. It's almost like your cat is pregnant and keeps getting pregnant, and you want to give those kids to a good home. And that's why we were very picky. And we went through route consultants, and I turned down buyers that I did not feel it wasn't about their financial qualifications, but would they be a good home for our people? And that's where the Wolfpack was formed. We have several contractors that I met off route consultants who, by the way, I believe there's a lot of good brokers out there. I highly recommend route consultants. I believe Spencer's the greatest contractor of all time, and I hope I can do 100th what he's done to help contractors in America. So they've done awesome. I've bought and I've sold and I've bought a listing off route consultants too. They are really good at what they do. I'm going to say that they brought me buyers, Ryan, that were not just buyers. They're friends. I mean, I went to a North Carolina Duke game earlier this year with two partners of a company that bought one of mine. So what we believe we're due is we have a turnkey operation that route consultant loves to sell because they know whoever buys it's going to be in great hands. They're still our family, whether their paycheck and the name on the truck says Meyer or somebody else, it's still our family. And that's just the principles we build on and look for. So how has that process worked, Ryan? I would say it's actually been a pleasant surprise because when you're forced to sell something you don't want to sell because of a scale requirement that changed by the way, after I sold it the next year, they changed the scale again where I could have kept it. So when this field goal post moving all over the place, bottom line is I ended up with not just business partners, but awesome people that are in this space. And God help them. If they didn't have my knowledge or my experience to help guide them, who knows what predicament they could be in under these last 2 years of duress.
Mike, there's all kinds of things that we could talk about. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, and maybe we'll have you back for another podcast. But at the beginning of the conversation, I had put out there that we want to talk about the AVP, the Alternative Vehicle Program. So I want to learn about your strategy. Could you break down first, what is AVP?
Absolutely. AVP is Alternate Vehicle Program designed by FedEx around the COVID time period. During COVID, it was very hard to source a vehicle. I've heard stories if you didn't give your salesman $5,000 cash, you were going to wait on that truck for 8 or 9 months. I believe they were taking bonuses to get. Basically, there were no trucks to be had. It was also very hard to source drivers. And during that time of COVID, everything changed. No one had warning it was coming. We all got caught with our pants down, if you will. And that's when FedEx said, look, there are no vehicles to have. We've thought about this in a back room for years. We didn't want to do it because it doesn't say FedEx on the vehicle. And, we know they love controlling things, and AVPs are not their typical vehicle they can control, let's just say. There's no vehicle inspections of it. There's no secure dash cams or trim codes on them. It's not a typical FedEx vehicle. So when it first came out, Ryan, I'm as honest and transparent as they come. I was scared of it. I did not understand it. And I said, I will never do an AVP. Here I am telling you that we're doing it. I said 3 years ago for 2 reasons. Number one, FedEx is telling me to do it, which usually scares me. And number 2, I did not understand the insurance implications of an accident. And I think FedEx could have done a much better job of rolling that out and explaining it to contractors in the way it was explained to me and my counterparts. So based on that, in 2019, 2020, I was like, I'll never do this program. And then we approached a new era. This is an era where we're in an inflated economy. I don't think anybody listening on this call would deny that. There's inflationary pressures. tires, wages, fuel. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. Yet, how many of our settlements were kept up with that? I mean, generally speaking, mine were deflated. During the time I needed an inflationary hit to my settlement, it went the other way. And that's true of most contractors. That's why it's unfortunate. I speak of the situation contractors have found themselves in. And I hope to God they don't look in the mirror and say it's my fault that this happened. And we're in a bad time. It's a wave, and I think it's going to get better in the future. However, if you take anything from this call, if there's anything I can do to help, please consider AVP in your operation. It will not work for everybody, but I think you owe it to yourself and your company and your investment to at least consider an AVP. So what is an AVP? It's a personal vehicle. It's a driver that generally will come in and load packages into their car during the sort or after the sort. Then they're dispatched. And frankly, you don't hear from them again. It's not like a typical ground driver. There are no pickups. There's no bulk. There's no, this business is mad at me because I took it to the wrong door. I mean, it's low maintenance. It also helps your safety score. It counts as a dispatch. If you're not where you want to be on tiers system, look at what an AVP could do. People are driving their own car. They're less likely to hit something than they would in your P1000. The other benefit of the AVP is the operational cost. It costs, generally speaking, and once again, if there's somebody listening in from California, please understand South Carolina and California are two different things, but it costs us about $360 to dispatch a ground truck these days. It used to be $260. It's up $100 in the last 3 years, at least for me, for my math. And I have a team that counts everything to the penny. That is basically just covering the cost of the truck, the cost of the fuel, the cost of the ground driver, the cost of the payroll taxes associated. We're not even talking about scanners and workers' comp and, overheads, uniform. I'm just talking the cost of the dispatch is around $360. With AVP, I'm around $200, $225, $250. So every time you dispatch an AVP, it's the only truck you're not going to lose money on. But on the other hand, you're putting $100 back into your account every time you dispatch one. So in March, I was tasked, and me and my team, to start looking at AVP again. We had said no to it. Ryan, we're looking at our P&L sheets trying to make sense of this. Why is our P&L margin continue to fall? I mean, how is this happening after all these years? And bottom line is no one's going to call and ask us. There is no collection plate. You are a business owner. You have to find solutions, sometimes in places you don't want to look. And I did not want to do this, and I did. And I'm so thankful I did. It's the best contribution I've given my company and the Wolfpack in my 20-something years. And I did research by listening to your podcast. You had a gentleman on here in Kansas who spoke very highly of his AVP, and it was very educational for me. So I hope the 7,000 contractors are listening. I hope you look at this. How did I launch 40 of them? Well, we're an extra large contractor, and what we looked at was a 20% conversion rate. So the important things is if you're running 10 routes in an area, hopefully you can convert 2 to AVP, not add AVP. If you're adding them, it's not saving you money, guys. It's costing you money. But if you can replace 2 ground dispatches with 2 AVPs, you're saving $220 a day or $1,200 a week. That could be the 2 or 3 points of margin that you're missing on your P&L. And hopefully when FedEx settlement comes back to where I believe it should be, to preserve a network, then you'll be cooking, with gas. I mean, you'll be ahead of everybody. But if you don't take that step and look under that rock like I did and consider AVP, I believe you're missing out on the easiest opportunity to fix your balance sheet right now.
So, Mike, AVP, there's a few different ways that you can do it, right? You can actually have a driver show up and literally use their own vehicle. I've also heard of contractors going out and buying used I don't know, Toyota Siennas or Dodge Caravans, minivan type vehicles, where they own them and then they bring on an AVP driver, but put them in their own vehicle, right? You can buy like 10 minivans for pretty cheap compared to a P1000. Are you doing some combination of both of those, or are you just having people use their own cars?
Great question, Ryan. When I started doing my research, we considered all three. We actually had a name for all three prototypes, if you will. And Sienna was actually the vehicle of our choosing, that if we were to have went that route. After exploring and going through alpha and beta testing with all three prototypes, we decided to go 100% on the traditional AVP, where they provide the vehicle, they provide the fuel, they provide the insurance, they provide the repairs and the tires, and we pay anywhere, depending on the market, from $1.70 to $3.50 a stop. And our this peak has been one of the smoother ones in recent memories. And with 40 AVPs picking up the slack, and some of them are double dispatching, loading their car twice at our relay stations. I mean, Ryan, I there's not enough time on this podcast for me to tell your listeners how important it is to at least consider an AVP in your operation. Even where you don't think it makes sense, you might be surprised. And I have an area, I guess I can say here, Myrtle Beach is a large coastal town, and there's a lot of neighborhoods, but there's also a lot of businesses. The AVPs, we let them, we cater to them. What we do is we say, look, guys, if you go into a business stop that gets cut to you and you don't want to go there again, just pull the vision sticker, let us know, we'll cut it out. What we do is cater to the AVP first. We want to maximize the vehicle, keep them with us. Our turnover rate on AVPs is less than 10% over a 6-month period. 90% of the ones that started with us in June are still with us right now. We also had a bonus program for them during peak. You take how many days they work on average during peak and add 2 zeros to it at the end of the year if they have full attendance. Their call off one time, bye-bye bonus. They signed a contract with us to receive that. So once again, perfect attendance during peak. I can't think of one AVP out of 40 that we've had an issue with. They're easier to maintain. Now, if their truck is in the shop, Ryan, we do have a loaner. We will let them rent one of our vehicles. So we put one loaner in each place. When we hire them as AVP, they're in an L5, so they're not allowed to drive larger vehicles. So it's good to have a loaner on place because you don't want them to not come to work because their car's in the shop. Would we ever hire them in L10s and let them drive Transits or Siennas? We looked at those options, but we don't see the need. We're able to get 100 stops in a Mini Cooper. We're able to get our 40 cubic foot. We're able to get 50 cubic foot in crossovers, and SUVs, we can get 60 cubic foot. And the beauty of DRO, one of the positives I think we can agree on this, is there's a very good small setting for AVP. So if you have too many stops on your AVPs, all you do is change the parameter from 1 cubic foot to 0.9 cubic foot or to 0.8. Within 3 minutes, DRO puts out a new solution where your AVPs are right in their sweet spot. Everything will fit. And then we build the driver routes, the ground driver routes, based off cubic foot of what's left. But you need to make sure ground plus AVP equal what you're currently running, or else you're not going to gain the operational cost that I speak of.
Mike, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Is there anything else that you want to talk about while you're here and you have this platform?
Ryan, thank you. I feel like it's my honor and my duty to be on here. And if I can change one contractor that woke up this morning and looked at their P&L and wanted to vomit, or like, why am I still doing this? I understand. I get you. And all I'm going to say is we're in these roles as entrepreneurs to not only take a risk for a reward, but we got to find solutions. And our business partner isn't helping us any. The economy is not helping us any. Well, we can't cry a river about it. We have to find ways and be open-minded about it. And that's what brought me to relays and AVPs and new efficiency programs. I can tell you my margins are probably 5% higher than what they would have been if I did not explore efficiency programs, relays, and AVP. So I wanted to be on this podcast, Ryan, not only because I'm a fan of yours and the job you've done. Definitely wanted to give a shout out to Spencer Route Consultants, because I think they're the best. There's a lot of good people in that space, but they are one of a kind, and I highly recommend them. And finally, there's people out there struggling. There's no doubt about it. I read an article that half the contractors are not cash flow positive. And to me, that cannot be the purpose of Pittsburgh or FedEx. I spent a lot of time in FedEx corporate over the years, and I can tell you that is not their long-term strategy. They are dependent on this contractor model. They will fight it to the death. I've been in meetings when I worked for them. I can tell you that the contractor model is what they built this company around. It's where the highest margin is. I think we're in a good spot. We just don't know it. With the advent of Express coming, what I'm going to tell you guys is actually a voice of hope. Find a way to survive, to weather the storm. And I do believe that there are better times ahead.
Mike, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you.
Ryan, thank you for having me.
Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.